Welcome to the Standard Podcast team, where we raise the bar, rebuild the culture, and call out the lies or misconceptions that nobody else will. This isn't motivation. This is a movement. I'm Thomas Rowe with my co-host and co-founder, Aaron Charles, and today we're sitting down with Aaron Ray, Ray, founder of 2% Consulting, NIL consultant, and former D1 athlete with a legal and tax background focused on athlete protection, compliance, and long-term NIL strategy. Aaron's story is one of athletic experience, advanced education, and dedication service to protecting athletes in an evolving landscape of NIL. With a JD and LL.M in taxation and 6 years in Big Four and mid-tier public accounting, Aaron brings a technical foundation in corporate M&A and state and local tax to a complex world of NIL. What makes Aaron's perspective so valuable is the combination of personal athletic experience and professional expertise. After volunteering in university athletic departments in compliance and scholarships, he saw firsthand the gaps in athlete support and shifted his work towards NIL education and protection. Today, Aaron advises student athletes, universities, collectives, and service providers while developing tools and programming that makes the NIL more transparent and manageable. His work includes upcoming NIL educational webinar series with us, including one specifically focused on NIL taxation and the comprehensive NIL CRM built to track income, monitor compliance, estimate taxes, and evaluate market dynamics for roster construction. Aaron serves on a university-led NIL think tank and is currently outlining a publication of how institutions may navigate a future where student athletes are classified as employees, an area that aligns with his work in employment law and ongoing bar preparation. As someone who goes by the Law Father on social media, Aaron represents a new generation of professionals who understand that the NIL era requires sophisticated legal, tax compliance expertise to protect athletes and empower universities to operate confidently. His mission is clear: building a system, education, and infrastructure that protect athletes while helping institutions navigate the unpredictable, unprecedented landscape with clarity and confidence. We're diving into the truth behind what it really takes to build identity, discipline, and legacy in sports and in life. Let's get into it. Aaron, thanks so much for joining us. You're not just a guest, you're a friend. We've been talking, Aaron and I have been talking to you for some time. We've already done 1 or 2 webinars, so we're really excited to have you on the podcast. Thanks for carving out time today.
Yeah, Thomas, Aaron, I definitely appreciate that intro, Thomas. It was great. I love, tuning in with you guys. You guys are doing great things in this space. And, I'm just glad to be a part of it. I'm glad that you guys are giving me the opportunity to be here. So again, Thomas, thank you for the intro. It was great. And so, I'm excited. I love talking NIL. I love sports. I have a passion for it. So I consider all day. I don't have time for that. And so again,
All right. We are back in business. Aaron, let's start here. You're the founder of 2% Consulting, a former Division I athlete with a JD and LL.M in taxation focused on athlete protection and NIL strategy. What does raising the standard mean to you in the work you're doing to protect athletes in the NIL space?
I mean, that's a great question, Thomas. Well, yeah, standard, like what does standard mean, right? I think standard as, the bar, right? What is your expectation? What are you, what are you expecting? And so when we're raising the bar, we're raising our expectation. I think, excuse me, we're raising the expectation. So, whatever we want out of our athletes, as an athlete, like what is your expectation, right? You want to, be a great athlete, right? You want to be consistent. You want to show up for practice. And you want to get better. Well, when you raise that bar, when you're raising the expectation, when you're raising the standard, you're raising your bar of play. You're raising your expectation. You're raising what you as an individual expect from yourself in hopes to get better. And so, in this space, I think our goal, at least my goal, to help out athletes, and what I think all athletes' goals should be is to have a high standard for yourself, which means have a high expectation for yourself. But once you continuously reach that expectation and you continuously reach, that bar, that standard that you set for yourself, continuously raising that standard and continuously raising the bar of expectation. So you're not just, the status quo, right? You're continuously growing, you're continuously getting better each and every season. So raising that bar.
Awesome. You nailed it, spot on it. And what do you think is the biggest lie that you feel the culture of the sports industry has sold athletes about NIL, financial planning, and what this new landscape actually means for their protection and long-term success?
Well, I think the biggest lie that's being told, I think it's just kind of an incomplete topic, an incomplete comment. Whereas we say, just work hard. You work hard, you're going to achieve your dreams. If you work hard, you're going to make all this NIL, income if you work hard. And I think that's part of it. Yes, is working hard. But I think the other that we failed to mention is, as we discussed earlier in our thing that we did with the webinar, is there's other things that come with that. There's, you're the character aspect of it, right? You can work hard and be the hardest working athlete out there, but if you don't have the character to back it up, that is what coaches are judging some of these athletes on now, is not just your performance on the field, but what is your character? What else are you doing? What kind of person you are, not just your performance.
No doubt. So with that being said, you saw gaps in athlete support firsthand while volunteering in university athletics, which led you to shift towards NIL education. What did you witness that convinced you that athletes need better legal, tax, and compliance support?
Yeah, I felt that these athletes were being taken advantage of. I said I seen it firsthand. I seen some of these agency contracts, and that these athletes are super excited, right? They're 17, 18-year-old kids, and they want to sign these deals. And so, when an athlete, when some sort of agent comes up to you and wanting to sign you, of course, that's a badge of honor. So they're just signing, but a lot of times they're signing a lot of their rights away. And so I seen that. I was like, these kids are being taken advantage of. Why? Because there's more money being put into the system. Sure. And so with I'd say my unique background, I just wanted to help and step in and see where I can bridge that gap.
Aaron, are you still okay? I think we're okay. With that being, I'm going to push you over to Aaron for identity and mission. Aaron, take it away.
Okay, great. Aaron, so great to have you on with us today. I want you to share with our audience. I want them to get to know Aaron, beyond all the accolades that Thomas shared at the top of the show. Who is Aaron?
Yeah, I love sports, right? And so I'm passionate about sports, but I also consider myself a family man, right? I have 2 kids, I have a wife. And so funny enough, I got away from sports for so long, and being a former athlete, I wanted to change my identity. And once I graduated undergrad and left track and field, I was like, I'm done with athletes. I'm done with sports. I want to be seen as Aaron, the accountant, or Aaron, the attorney, or Aaron, the law student, or Aaron, the son. And it was till about 4 or 5 years into my career, which I was away from athletics and sports, where I'm like, wow, I'm missing a part of me. I'm missing that. And so I always say an athlete is going to be part of me. So I'm always, athlete Aaron, first. But, I think for me is, I'm a person who, I like to work hard. And yes, I'm advocating and trying, my best to be in this sports space and advocate for athletes, because yes, I do have a passion for it, but also, I enjoy other things. Again, I'd say I'm a family man, and funny enough, I am a tax man now. So as much as I try to get away from that, in my former life and, being in public accounting, I realized that, tax is so valuable. So yes, I'm a tax man as well.
I love it. The tax man is probably the one you want to probably not tell people, but hey, what do I know? That's the one people are like, what? Which we need to understand our taxes, which can be very complex.
It can be. So, unfortunately, when I got away from the tax realm, I'm like, wow, tax is needed more than ever. So, I realize I'm trying to step into that space even more now. So
I love that. So with all the work that you're doing, which we love, obviously we work with you closely. What does legacy beyond just building a successful consulting practice mean to you? Like, what do you really want to do with the work that you're doing? What's your legacy? What's the impact you want to leave?
yeah, when I think about when I think about that word, I define it as impact. What impact am I having, right? I think a good analogy is the NFL and the NFL is probably one of the most prestigious awards in the NFL, and it has nothing to do with the play on the field. It has everything to do with your impact that you're having within your community, within the people around you, and that is what I want to do. That is what I want to leave. I went to law school specifically to advocate for athletes, and so being the background that I do have, I want to leave an impact. I want to leave the sports world better than what I found it. Better. I mean, sports gave me everything. And I think it's my job and my duty to give back where I can, and have that impact where I can. And so, I'm stepping into this space, just really trying to give back. I don't want to be a gatekeeper of knowledge and information. I just want to, give back and be of service, leave that impact. And so, in 5, 10, 15 years, when NIL is this big, this fully elaborate thing with all with all these guardrails and everything, I want to say that I helped build that structure, or I helped, student athletes move within this landscape.
That's awesome. I love that. And with that, what have you seen in your experience so far that separates athletes and institution who are successfully navigating the NIL landscape from those who get caught up in maybe compliance issues, tax issues, financial mistakes?
I think the biggest thing is education and the education gap. I feel like student athletes, they're trying to figure it out, just like everyone else. The athletic departments, the compliance officers, the academic advisors at schools, everyone is just trying to figure it out. No one really knows kind of what's happening. And so they're just trying to stay up to date as best as they can, while still trying to operate an athletic department, while still trying to perform, within their sport. And so a lot of times they just don't have the bandwidth to then go out and research and, hours worth of education and knowledge. And so to me, that's where I see the biggest gap, and where a lot of people are failing, or where, you have a large tax bill come April time, or you're ineligible at the end of the season, or you're in the transfer portal and you done lost, your scholarship from the former school, because there's just a lack of education. And you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what questions to ask, because it's new. Everything is new. And so, most 17, 18-year-olds, they don't know about 1099s. They're so used to being their taxes taken out of their paychecks that they don't understand that they have to actually withhold their own taxes. Right. And so we get caught in the big dollar signs of NIL and all these deals happening, but we don't know the education behind it. So there's an educational gap. And I think that's the biggest, issue that we're seeing.
Yeah, you highlight a great point. It's highly complex. And yeah, not having enough information to make great decisions is definitely a big piece of that. So with that, what's one truth you wish every athlete, parent, coach, or athletic administrator understood about NIL taxes and compliance that most are not hearing?
Yeah, I think the openness and being able to adapt. Not every deal is going to be the same. Not every situation is going to be the same, and so you have to to be open. You have to adapt. You have to understand that what that deal was, that may not be next deal. And so, I may not like this next deal, or I may not like the terms of this next deal, but I can negotiate it, right? I have to be able to adapt. What worked in a school that I went to in Florida might not work, and it might not be the same kind of deal, the same kind of stuff that's happening in, a school in California. So if I enter in the transfer portal and I'm going to this next school in California, I'm going to have to adapt. I'm going to have to adapt as to how they structure their NILs, and their NIL deals, kind of how that coach operates, how that school operates, how that system operates, how that state operates. Everything is going to be different. So you have to be flexible. You have to be able to adapt. And if not, it can really lead to some, unfortunate situations, some unfortunate consequences.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Like nothing's the same because you're dealing with states, different state laws, tax codes, all the things. And so, it's like it's not that your one deal in Tennessee doesn't mean the same thing as if you were to get a very similar deal, let's say in California, just based on one example, taxes.
Exactly. And even going further with that is you have you have the federal laws and federal legislation, you have state legislation that's continuously happening. And so, what is good, this month, that whole thing, that whole law, that whole rule may change in 2 months. And you have to be able to adapt. You have to be flexible, and you have to be open and willing to make that change, because if not, then you could be stuck. So it's ever changing. There's so much, happening, and you have to be adaptable.
Yeah, that's a really great point. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Thomas.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. Hey, Ray, let's get into NIL strategy and compliance. You're developing a comprehensive NIL CRM to track income, monitor compliance, estimate taxes, and evaluate market dynamics. With your experience in the Big Four accounting and legal expertise, what are the biggest NIL mistakes you see athletes and institutions making right now?
Yeah, I think a big thing is not understanding the contract, not understanding your contract terms, right? What we care about, what a lot of people care about is, what does that dollar sign is? Is it $1 million? Is it $500,000? Is it 20,000? But are we reading the fine print? Are we reading the blueprint? Do we understand the compensation structure? Do we understand when we're getting paid, how we're getting paid, the deliverables? What can and can't we do? What are the clauses in there? I think those are very key things that we're missing, or that athletes, or are failing to understand. And so, some athletes, they don't understand that if you enter in the transfer portal based on your contract with your former school, you just entering the transfer portal, you may lose out on that scholarship or the NIL money that you signed for. And if you don't understand that, you're thinking, oh, I'm just going to enter in the transfer portal. If it doesn't work out, I'll come back to my former school. Now you may not have a school to come back to.
That's right.
So I think the biggest thing really is just clarity and understanding of the contract. You have to understand the contract. I think another key point is having the team around you that you trust, a trusted team, it could be the one advisor, it can be your family, it can be whoever it is that is kind of that you kind of help you, guide you through this space, hoping and understanding that they have to know this space as well, and know kind of what to do, who to, how to operate in this space, who to contact in this space. And so I think your support system, your surrounding support system can also be the the key factor is if you're going to succeed in this space or not. Because if you have people who, don't have your best interest in mind, or they don't understand what's happening, or they in fact don't understand a contract, the person that's being affected the most is the athlete. They're the ones that's going to lose out on that eligibility. So understanding the contract terms yourself as an athlete, and having the people around you who understand and know how to, move within this space.
Awesome. With that, you have an upcoming NIL education webinar series, including one specifically on NIL taxation. I mean, I know it's an obvious question, but why is the tax piece so critical, and what do athletes need to understand about the financial implications of their NIL earnings?
Yeah, I think you should be thinking about I think you should be thinking about taxes when you're in high school, before you sign your first, deal, your first scholarship deal. Why?
Sure.
Well, because of state taxes, right? Your NIL income could go a lot further in a state like Florida than it can in California. Well, why? Well, California is taxing you at 13.3%, whereas Florida, Florida is a tax-free, state. And so, in terms of income, right? And so that first deal that you're signing, that first scholarship, right, that can already affect your taxes right then and there. And so we want to be able to understand that right before you're signing a deal. You want to understand, what do you want within NIL? Do you want your NIL funds to go as, a long way? If that's the case, then maybe thinking about what state, you're going to play in, that matters. I think a big thing that matters that we don't think about is how NIL can affect your parents' taxes. Right. Because NIL can affect the student athlete's dependency status. I mean, if it's affecting your dependency status, that's effectively affecting your parents' filing status and how they're filing. They may not be able to claim you as a dependent, so which might raise their taxes, because they can't use that child deduction anymore. So NIL not only affects just the student athlete, but it can affect their family, their parents' taxes. It can affect your grant status. If you're getting a Pell Grant or some sort of FAFSA, it can affect that as well. So it's these things that we don't think about when we're signing these deals, and how taxes can affect what you're doing next. But it's going to have an effect from day one, from when your first deal until you're graduating. That NIL is going to affect.
Right on. Let's get into, if you knew then what you know now. And if you could sit down with yourself as a D1 athlete before you understood the legal and tax complexities that would become central to your career, what would you tell that version of Aaron about preparing for this type of work?
It's a good question. I would say trust your work. And what I mean by that, and not trust the process like like the Sixers, but trust your work. Trust again. I had to lean on and trust my passion, that my passion will push me through here. I have to lean and trust on my legal background, right? Of me going to law school, of me and my accounting background, of me of my LL.M background. I have to trust that. And, so when I'm talking to either students or school, or giving advice or giving education, I have to trust that I know what I'm talking about, but I have to trust my work. If I don't trust my work, then I'm up here, I'm rambling, I'm doing all this stuff. It goes the same thing with your field of play. Trust your work, trust the practice that you've done over and over and over. If you shot that same jump shot, 2,000 times over the summer, well, when the season starts, trust that you put in the work to allow you to succeed and have the confidence in your next journey. I would say trust your work, and I have to trust my work, because there's been times where I've lacked confidence, where I'm like, I don't know if I can do it. But I go back and it's like, well, I spent hours and hours and hours doing this research. I spent years and years and years in school. or, within my career, that it set me up to be able to thrive in this space. I have to trust that. So I would say trust your work.
Love it. And what about the current student athletes who are navigating NIL opportunities, but may not understand the compliance of tax implications? What do they need to do to protect themselves?
Ask questions.
Got it.
Don't sit on the sidelines. You want to be involved. You want to know. The more you know, the better you can be, right? Just as an athlete, the more you know the rules of the game, you understand better how to play it, right? And so if you're coming in and you want to understand compliance, you want to understand how to really maximize your NIL value, if you want to stay out of trouble and not get those deals, those NIL deals denied, and stay eligible, understand the rules, get educated,
Right.
and that will help you, move on through this space.
Awesome. That's kick-ass, Aaron. Thank you. Now let's send it back over to Aaron for the rapid fire round. Aaron, take it away.
Okay, this section's fun. So I'm going to start a sentence and you're going to finish it. Okay.
All right.
Discipline equals.
Discipline. Oh, discipline. For me, discipline equals structure. It equals consistency.
Oh, I love it. Leadership equals.
Leadership, adaptability.
Compliance equals.
Oh, compliance equals. Oh, that's a good one. Compliance equals, I say, honesty.
Got it. And what about legacy? What does legacy equal?
Impact.
Awesome. What is one thing you would never compromise on?
One thing I would never compromise on, the value of hard work.
Ooh, I love that. And if you could put a message on a billboard for this generation of athletes, what would your message to this generation of athletes be?
My message on a billboard. Preparation builds confidence.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's awesome. With that, it's back to you, T-Row.
Awesome. That was kick-ass stuff, Aaron. Before we wrap up, is there something we didn't touch on today that you feel athletes, parents, and institutions need to hear about NIL strategy, compliance, and protection?
Yeah, the one thing I would say that maybe we didn't touch on, and that I always like to kind of share, is as an athlete, especially as a young athlete in this landscape, especially in this landscape, is being accountable and self-reflection. Right? Like, don't be afraid to make mistakes, but learn from those mistakes. Hold yourself accountable, because that's how you're going to grow. And that is how you build the character, but also that's what coaches see. That's what these schools are seeing. And now a lot of them are judging, how much money they're going to give these certain athletes. A lot of it is based on their character. It's based on, okay, can they hold themselves accountable? I told this athlete, they have to work harder. Are they going to look then at themselves, and come back the following week and put in extra work? So I think, having young athletes understand accountability and self-reflection, especially in this day and age, is very important.
Awesome. You went from the rapid fire round. Now I'm going to put you in the hot seat. Art imitating life. One of my favorite questions for our guests. What are the top 3 sports movies according to Aaron?
Ooh, top 3 sporting movies. I like this one. I love my sports movies. Blue Chips.
Okay.
Great movie. Coach Carter, Samuel Jackson.
Yes.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. And I'll say, I remember I seen this. There's a lot of films that I really love, but I remember seeing this film as a kid. I was in either 4th or 5th grade with my entire football team. Remember the Titans. Had such an impact on me, growing up. So blue chips, color, and advertising.
I love it. Those are all great ones. Those are really good ones. Aaron, where can people connect with you to learn more about 2% Consulting and access your NIL education resources? Is there a website, your social media, or an email?
Yeah, so you can find me. I talk about NIL a lot on my LinkedIn page, which is, Aaron Ray, JD LL.M. Also, I have a website, which is 2percentconsulting.com. That's TWO% all spelled out.com. That's where you'll find, extra resources. That's where you also can get in contact with me. I share my services on there as well. So that's 2percentconsulting.com. If you want to know just about me, and kind of what I do just on a every day, I talk a bit NIL, but not really. My IG, it's at thelawfather.com, and my email address is aray1906@gmail.com.
Awesome. Anyway, thank you for showing us what it looks like to combine athletic experience with legal expertise to protect the next generation of athletes. And team, if this conversation hits you, do two things with us. One, share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. An athlete navigating NIL opportunities and tax implications, a parent trying to understand compliance, an athletic administration building NIL programs, and two, connect with A-Ray on LinkedIn, as well as his website, as well as his email. We'll have those connections or those links in the show notes. Team, if you need NIL guidance, compliance support, or want to understand the legal landscape, A-Ray offers free consultation for student athletes and institutions. And if you're an athlete, parent, or coach ready to raise the standard, check out Aaron and myself at blueprintbluechip.com. We work with athletes, their families, and coaches to get them to the next level. And if this episode resonated with you, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps us reach more athletes, parents, and leaders who need to hear this message that A-Ray just shared with you. This is a standard podcast, and this movement only grows when we raise the standard together. Talent fades, but truth endures. Let's raise the bar, rebuild the culture, and become the standard. A-Ray, Aaron, thank you guys so much, team. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.